Ever wonder what it's like to sit at a family dinner where everyone pities you for being poor while you're secretly worth more than all of them combined? Yeah, me too, except I lived it. My name is Elena. I'm 39, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying Thanksgiving of my entire life. But first, let me take you back to where this all started. I was 8 years old when my world changed forever. Up until then, I was an only child. My parents weren't exactly warm and fuzzy, but they were there. Mom helped with homework. Dad took me fishing on the weekends. We were normal. Then came the night Aunt Patricia showed up at 2 in the morning, telling me to pack a bag. My mom was at the hospital. My sister Brooke was coming, but she wasn't supposed to be here for another 2 months. Something was very wrong. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits and whispered conversations. Brooke was so tiny, hooked up to all these tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to hold her or even get too close. And that's when I first felt it, this invisible barrier forming between me and the rest of my family. When they finally brought Brooke home, our house became a sterilization zone. I'm talking hospital-grade disinfection everywhere, hand sanitizer stations in every room, constant cleaning. The harsh smell of bleach still makes me nauseous to this day. But here's the part that really messed me up. Anytime I showed even this slightest sign of being sick, I was shipped off to either Grandma Rose's house or Aunt Patricia's. And I mean every single time. Sneeze once, pack your bags. Slight cough, off to Grandma's you go. At first, I thought it was fun. Grandma Rose made amazing chocolate chip cookies, and Aunt Patricia had this incredible collection of mystery novels I was working through. But kids aren't stupid. Eventually, you start to understand what's really happening. You're not being sent on adventures. You're being treated like a threat. Like your very existence might hurt your precious baby sister. I tried everything to get their attention in healthier ways. Got straight A's. Mom barely looked up from Brooke's latest doctor's appointment schedule. Won first place at the science fair with this elaborate project on solar energy. Dad just asked if I could store the display in the garage because Brooke was supposedly allergic to the glue I used. Is that even a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. I'd been practicing for months for the school talent competition, teaching myself to play Clair de Lune on the piano. The night of the show, Brooke had a fever of 99.2 degrees. Guess who didn't have a single person in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Brooke's 12-minute violin recital, or she basically murdered Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Here's what really gets me. Brooke figured out the system by the time she was 7. She had outgrown most of her actual health issues, but that didn't stop her from milking it. Headache, stay home from school. Feeling tired? Make someone else do her chores. Stressed about a test? Mom would literally call the school and get extensions. I started spending more and more time in my room, buried in books about art history and antiques. Funny how life works. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Brooke claimed she was allergic to my vanilla candles, so it was the one place she wouldn't invade. You know what the worst part was? When she faked being sick, part of me felt grateful. At least then I'd get shipped to Grandma Rose's, where someone actually asked about my day or cared about what I was reading. Grandma was the one who got me interested in vintage jewelry. She had this incredible collection of antique pieces that she let me organize and catalog. I guess I should have seen it as foreshadowing. The worst thing wasn't even the obvious favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to justify it. Brooke just needs more attention because she had such a difficult start. Elena's always been so independent. Elena understands that her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a kid who couldn't figure out why having a functioning immune system made me less worthy of love. But looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. The constant message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient to have around doesn't just disappear. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-reliant. When nobody checks your homework or shows up to your accomplishments, you learn real quick to be your own cheerleader. High school. Most people either loved it or hated it. Me, I saw it as my ticket out. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you to achieve like knowing nobody's going to do it for you.
Remember how I mentioned spending hours organizing Grandma Rose's jewelry collection? That taught me something valuable: the importance of systematic organization and attention to detail. I approached everything in high school with that same mindset. My desk at home looked like something from a magazine. Color-coded notes, meticulous organized study schedules, everything in its place. Brooke used to mock me for it, calling me robot girl. Real nice, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. Nobody is watching your failures or your successes, so you can do whatever the hell you want. I joined every club that wouldn't conflict with my part-time job at Maria's Diner. Shout out to Maria, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents forgot. Debate team, check. National Honor Society, president, check. Editor-in-chief of the school paper, check. Debate team was where I really found my voice. There's something incredibly satisfying about dismantling someone's argument while staying completely composed. It also taught me negotiation skills, which I didn't realize at the time, but would come in handy later. I won regionals twice. My parents couldn't make either competition because Brooke had crucial soccer games. She was on the junior varsity B team and didn't even play in the game. Junior year was when things got really interesting. I took the SAT and got a perfect score. Not like, oh, pretty good perfect. I mean perfect. 1,600. You know how many people get that? Less than 0.5%. I remember staring at the score screen for like 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. I ran home to tell my parents. I know, stupid, right?
Mom was in the kitchen helping Brooke with her English homework. The conversation went something like this. Mom, look, I got a perfect SAT score. That's nice, sweetie, but could you keep it down? Brooke's trying to concentrate. She has a big quiz tomorrow. Brooke chimed in. Yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. Mom replied, Brooke, honey, don't stress. You're just a different type of learner. I still have the printout of those SAT scores somewhere. Never made it onto the fridge, but Brooke's C+ in English, that baby got prime refrigerator real estate, complete with a "We're so proud of you" magnet. The college application process was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone, wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendation letters, handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, was the real MVP. My parents were too busy to help with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Stanford, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, every single one with scholarship offers. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing exactly what would happen if Brooke found out. They'd suddenly shift all focus to her. If Elena goes to Stanford, I'll be all alone, or some nonsense like that. The day I got my full ride offer from Columbia, Brooke made junior varsity cheerleading. Guess which one got celebrated with a family dinner? Hint, I had microwave macaroni in my room while they went to Red Lobster. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Full tuition, room and board, even a book stipend. I could finally leave that house where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the public library, a third-floor window seat overlooking the park, and cried for an hour. Not sad tears, relief tears. When I told my parents over dinner that I was going to Columbia, the response was classic. Mom said, "Columbia? But that's so far away. What if Brooke needs you?" Dad added, "I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Brooke's cheer competitions are really expensive." Brooke was literally crying, "Oh my God, finally! Can I have your room? I need space for my YouTube setup." The summer before college, I worked double shifts at Maria's Diner, saving every penny I could. Maria, bless her heart, always slipped me extra in tips and made sure I got to take home leftover desserts at the end of my shifts. She also taught me something valuable: how to recognize genuine people in a world full of fakes. "Baby," she'd tell me, "in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say." Move-in day at Columbia, my parents couldn't come because, surprise, Brooke had a cheerleading exhibition. Aunt Patricia drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm, and handed me an envelope with $500. "Your Grandma Rose wanted you to have this. She's so proud of you." I found out later that Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I made a promise to myself. I was going to build such an amazing life that being overlooked would seem impossible. Not for revenge,
college, not to prove anything to my family, but for that 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to grandma's house for sneezing. College flew by in a blur of all-nighters, ramen noodles, and glorious independence. I graduated summa cum laude from Columbia, not that my parents noticed. They were too busy helping Brooke transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot takes an interesting turn. I landed an entry-level position at Whitmore & Associate Auction House in Manhattan. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A real high-end establishment, old money clients, that kind of operation. I started in their estate sales division, which meant cataloging the belongings of wealthy people after they passed away. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. The breakthrough came a few months in. I was working on the Harrington estate. Mrs. Harrington was an elderly widow who died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a massive collection of costume jewelry. I'm talking rooms full of the stuff. This is where those hours at Grandma Rose came in handy. I'm going through this pile of jewelry when something catches my eye. It's an Art Deco brooch. Nothing too flashy, but something about it felt off. The weight was wrong for costume jewelry. The clasp mechanism was way too sophisticated for a replication.
I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching vintage jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office using the company's subscription to several antique jewelry databases. The more I researched, the more certain I became. This wasn't costume jewelry. This was the real deal. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody was gonna believe me if I claimed we had a potential gold mine on our hands. So I did what debate team taught me. I built an airtight case. I spent 2 weeks on my lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even spent some of my pathetic excuse for savings on an online gemology course. Finally worked up the courage to approach my boss, Mr. Whitmore. I brought the whole presentation, comparison photos, historical documentation, the works. The conversation went something like this. Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Harrington collection. Mr. Whitmore barely looking up from his desk. Elena, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. I know, but look at these maker's marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1927 signatures. Mr. Whitmore finally paying attention. Where did you learn all this? I did some research. Long story short, that costume brooch sold for $52,000 at auction. Turns out it was part of a limited collection made for some European socialite in the 20s. But here's the real kicker. Mr. Whitmore started trusting me after that. He began giving me other pieces to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless hobby of sorting vintage jewelry became actually valuable. I threw myself into learning everything I could, took every online course I could afford, spent weekends at estate sales studying pieces, even started a little notebook documenting different authentication methods. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, walls covered in printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guides. The auction house started seeing results. I was finding valuable pieces others had overlooked, building relationships with collectors, understanding the market. My commission checks got bigger and bigger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was actually saving money. Family? Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still attended like an idiot, the conversation went like this. Mom, Elena's still at that little antique shop, right? Me. Auction house. And yes, actually, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Brooke interrupts. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at Target. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I'd found something completely mine. Something I was actually good at. Something that had nothing to do with being Brooke's sister or the family disappointment. Then came the Caldwell collection. This was about 2 years into my job at the auction house. Huge estate, old money family, lots of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team cataloging their jewelry collection, and that's when I spotted it. A seemingly ordinary Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had dismissed. I spent 3 days researching it, barely slept. Turns out it was a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection that was thought to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction
for $297,000, Mr. Whitmore called me into his office. I thought I was getting promoted. Instead, he said something that completely changed the game. Elena, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. At first, I brushed it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the idea took root. I started doing small freelance authentication gigs on the side. Word spread that I had a great eye. Private collectors started reaching out directly. One night, I'm sitting in my tiny apartment, surrounded by jewelry reference books and authentication tools I'd gradually collected, when I had a realization. This is something I could actually do. I could build something of my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a massive loan against my car, emptied my savings account, rented a tiny office space in a less desirable part of town. People thought I was insane. Maybe I was. I converted a storage room above a Thai restaurant that was about the size of a college dorm. The rent was cheap because it always smelled like pad thai, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat by the window in the corner. But it was mine. The first few months were terrifying. And by terrifying, I mean I'd wake up at 4 in the morning in a cold sweat, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. The loan payments felt like a noose around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a card table I bought from a thrift store and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, I sanitized the hell out of it. But in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and connections are everything. And my time at the auction house had given me both. I started small, authentication work for local antique dealers. My rates were lower than the big firms, but my attention to detail was getting noticed. Word spread. 6 months in, a breakthrough moment. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house asked me to look at a collection of Edwardian brooches. The owner wanted authentication before selling. Turns out, it was a massive collection, pieces from 3 generations of the family. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I found 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misidentified as later reproductions. The owner was so thrilled with my detailed report that she not only paid my fee, but gave me a 10% commission when the pieces sold. That commission was $94,000, more money than I'd made in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Private collectors hearing about my talent for finding overlooked pieces. Estate attorneys wanting consultations on inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Mr. Whitmore was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a recent gemology graduate who reminded me way too much of myself at that age. Brilliant, but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and is worth her weight in gold. The firm grew faster than I could have predicted, moved to a proper office downtown, goodbye pad thai smell, built a team of specialists, developed a reputation for finding misplaced treasures. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry pieces get misidentified as costume jewelry sitting in people's attics.
But success came with its own challenges. The bigger we got, the harder it became to keep it secret from my family. They still thought I worked in some little antique shop. Brooke would make these snide comments during family dinners. Elena, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it. Me, having just authenticated a $1.4 million piece that morning. Sure, I'll take a look. Mom would introduce me to people as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I'd been quoted in Art and Antiques magazine, and we just opened our 3rd office. What's weird about it? Keeping the secret became almost fun, like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my deliberately chosen Target outfit, actually wearing a Chanel jacket I'd carefully selected for being understated, listening to Brooke talk about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I just closed a deal worth more than her annual salary. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic vintage pieces to family gatherings and seeing if anyone noticed. They never did. Brooke once spent 20 minutes showing off her new Michael Kors watch that cost $250. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. By year 5, we'd established offices in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. I spent more time on planes than in my own bed. We'd built a reputation for discretion. Turns out, many wealthy people want their jewelry authenticated without the whole world knowing.
The money was massive. Like, we had to hire an entire team of financial advisors, kind of massive, but I kept a relatively modest lifestyle. But a nice but not flashy house in a good neighborhood. Drove a luxury car, but not an obvious one. The only place I really splurged? My home office. State-of-the-art authentication equipment, the best security system money could buy, a custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox jealous. Here's the irony. They thought I was being frugal to help them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Elena to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I just authenticated a collection that earned me a commission larger than their mortgage. You know what's weird about success? The more you have, the harder it becomes to explain to people who've always seen you as less than. It's like explaining color to someone who's only ever seen black and white. They lack the framework to understand. But by this point, my business was thriving. We had the East Coast high-end jewelry authentication market cornered. Our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd drive to my parents' house for dinner, playing Elena, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was getting ridiculous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked meatloaf while Brooke dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Something like organizing her boss's filing system without making mistakes. One Sunday stands out vividly in my mind. I just finished a massive deal, authenticating a lost Bulgari piece that I'd been sitting in someone's safe deposit box for 30 years. The commission? 7 figures. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' place, still riding the high from the successful authentication. Mom said, "Elena, honey, are you okay? Your clothes are looking a bit threadbare." "Oh, trying to save money," I replied, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater I'd deliberately chosen for its subtle appearance. Brooke responded, "Well, if you'd gotten a real career instead of playing with old jewelry." Dad interrupted, "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my meatloaf, trying not to laugh. Around this time, I started the anonymous transfers. Aunt Patricia mentioned to me that my parents were struggling with Brooke's student loan payments and some medical bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I set up an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was contributing $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Patricia or another relative. Brooke, of course, took credit for inspiring family members to help. The money helped, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents started treating me with this weird mix of pity and patronizing pride, like I was some noble poverty key sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Brooke's spending became more extravagant. She'd show up to dinner with new designer bags claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot a real Gucci from 20 paces. She started taking lavish vacations, posting on Instagram about her blessed life. I'm pretty sure she was using my support money for shopping sprees, but I stayed quiet. The irony was too delicious. Then came the MBA drama. Brooke announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA. Private university, of course, only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears about how they couldn't afford it. I suggested maybe Brooke could look at state schools. They have great programs. "Oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of helping, could you increase your monthly contribution for a few years?" I increased it to $7,000 a month. My accounts barely noticed, but watching them praise Brooke for taking initiative with her education while assuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The real kicker is I was giving a guest lecture at the same business school Brooke wanted to attend. My family had no idea. The dean had personally invited me to speak on luxury goods authentication and business growth. I had to make up an excuse for why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My double life started to feel like a weird superhero situation. By day, running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, On Sunday evenings, I was just Elena, the disappointing daughter who worked at an antique shop. The weight of the lie was getting heavier.
Brooke made snide comments about my career constantly. Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Dad suggested I get a real job. I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode quite so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, crying about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the thought of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 people was overwhelming her. Now, I'd like to tell you I offered to help purely out of the goodness of my heart, but honestly, I was tired of pretending her dry turkey was edible. Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom, concerned, you're not taking out a loan, are you? I arranged everything with a high-end catering company I used for business events. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you question why you ever bothered cooking yourself. It cost more than my parents thought I made in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major auction happening in Hong Kong. This stunning Art Nouveau necklace was up for sale, and I had a client interested in authentication if they won the bid. The food arrived right on schedule. Everything was perfectly prepared. Brooke, of course, had to comment, "Store-bought stuffing, really, Alana? Mom's is so much better." This from the girl who once set the fire alarm off making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were loving the food. Brooke shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per serving than her weekly grocery budget. Between dinner and dessert, I stepped away to check my laptop. The auction was getting interesting, and I needed to be ready in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Brooke's room had been remodeled 3 times. That's when everything went sideways. I had left my authentication software running with several tabs open showing various accounts and current contracts. Brooke came in without knocking, some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen and immediately saw her opportunity to finally expose how pathetic her older sister really was. "Let's show everyone what Elena's really been up to," she said, smirking. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. Picture this, 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, full of gourmet turkey and half-drunk on expensive wine they thought was from Trader Joe's. Time to see what kind of important work Elena's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently expecting to humiliate me with whatever small antique deals she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. Like, you could hear the fancy clock I'd gotten Mom for Christmas ticking. She thought it was a replica. My screen displayed current account balance, $15.2 million, pending authentication contract, $538,000, recent transaction, $1.4 million, Hong Kong auction feed open, company quarterly profit report, $4.8 million. Brooke's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between shock and nausea. She actually swayed on her feet. This can't be right," she whispered. "Brooke, honey, what is it?" Mom asked. She's rich. Elena's rich." If it was possible, the silence deepened even further. Then Mom started laughing, like really laughing. "Don't be ridiculous. Elena works at that little antique shop." I stood up slowly, smoothing out my basic cashmere sweater that cost more than their monthly mortgage. "Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication firms in the country. For years, those antique shop comments, I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities." Dad choked on his wine. Aunt Patricia dropped her fork. My uncle started coughing violently. Then Mom's laughter turned into something else. Her face went red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. "You have millions and you let us struggle?" "Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month. While sitting on millions, your sister has student loans." And there it was. Not congratulations, not, "Wow, we're so proud," just anger that I hadn't given them more money. Brooke started crying. Shocking, I know. Sobbing about how she deserved to know how I'd betrayed the family. Dad joined in. "How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you." "Raised me? You shipped me off to Grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Brooke might feel left out. You never saved a dime from my college, but took out loans
loans for her private school. And now you're angry that I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were chaos. Mom screaming about family obligations, Dad yelling about ungrateful children, Brooke alternating between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering staff was trying to serve desserts while looking extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag that Mom had previously complimented as a nice knockoff, and walked out.
Behind me, I could hear Mom already discussing how to spend my money. Something about Brooke's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition Audi, my phone started exploding with texts. The family group chat erupted. Brooke started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a tornado hit in slow motion, except the tornado was my family and the debris was my sanity. Let's start with the text messages. Within 1 hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 53 missed calls, over 200 messages. Mom's followed this interesting progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why are you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Brooke had gone full social media warrior. She posted this massive rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that really got me. Brooke actually posted all those years of me trying to help Elena's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy? The betrayal hurt so much. I almost threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she ever gave me, she suggested I try selling jewelry on Etsy. If you're not familiar with the term, flying monkeys are when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, who I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to tell me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture about the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she get my number, felt compelled to share her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun started when they showed up at my office. I arrived Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Brooke sitting in our reception area. They told Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authentication services. Brooke was clutching her Michael Kors bag like it was actually worth something. The conversation went about as well as you'd expect. We've discussed it as a family, Mom started. A family discussion without the family member you're discussing? Mom admiring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone, Brooke chimed in. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly, Pat added, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Brooke responded, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. You owe me. For what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Don't be dramatic, Elena. We gave you everything. No, I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there, in my own office lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Brooke started her fake crying routine, but quickly stopped when she realized it wasn't working. Then things got ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Watching my 60-year-old mother being escorted out while screaming about ungrateful children was surreal. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I did have their names added to the building's do not admit list. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses. They even tried contacting me through my company's customer service line. I finally had to send a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Then Mom played her final card. She called Grandma Rose. But here's the thing about Grandma Rose. She's smarter than all of them combined. Her response was, good for Elena. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms.
Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new place with better security, changed all my numbers. The company? We're doing better than ever. Turns out my family drama attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion in the situation. Brooke continues posting passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. From what I've heard, she's starting her own jewelry authentication business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me after my lawyer sent them a formal letter outlining how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now telling everyone that they never wanted my money anyway, and that they're praying for my soul. The best part? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners filled with subtle insults. No more downplaying my achievements to spare their feelings. No more bankrolling the Brooke Show. My therapist says I'm finally setting healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story. Thanks for letting me share it. Oh, and Brooke, I know you're probably still checking up on me. That Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your latest Instagram post? Definitely fake. Just saying. Drop a like and subscribe for more stories that prove sometimes the universe knows exactly what it's doing. See you in the next one.